Maggie. I'm a licensed clinical psychotherapist with degrees in psychology, theology, and marriage and family therapy, a national certification in dialectical behavioral therapy, and a national certification in integrative mental health. In this video, I'm not looking to diagnose anyone. I'm only willing to offer insight into situations like these. Okay, her talk says, the people of God collectively survive as a field of intelligence in the repairing of the universes as the great white brotherhood. We are going to get into it tonight. I have a lot to say. And you know, I like to bring receipts. But first, let's say hi to some people. Adric is here. He says it's on. And hashtag Pivot Point Wednesdays. Nina is here and says, hi, my favorite auntie. Armando is here with the peace sign. Adrian says, let's go. And he's firing on both of his 2 cylinders tonight. Yes. All right. And Leon, the Henny King, is here. All right. Well, let's get into it because I have a lot to say. This one's going to be a little bit longer than the last few. The last 2 or 3 have been kind of short. The red flags abound in this key. So we'll continue using a little bit of Disney's TVA, the Bible, and some other tools and concepts for making her talks very unnecessarily esoteric work, not soteric, as well as critiquing his premise and giving some guidance. So this key focuses on divine hierarchy. Yay. Now, the full text reading is available on this channel if you would like to listen to it. I try to play some nifty background music when I'm reading so that it's a little bit more entertaining. So let's talk about some of these highlights because, again, like I said, I've got a lot to say. I'm going to go through a few of these. So he says, number 1, the key stresses the words people of God collectively survive. The people of God repair the universes. The people of God are known as the Great White Brotherhood. Now, her talk says in later interviews that white, the term white, is not racial, but it means light. So originally, when I was going to talk about this, I was going to interchange light and white. But I question his later changing of the racial thing. And I will show you why as we go. So number 7 says, the first evolutionary threshold in the vertical ascension taken by the child of God is in the crossing of many happenstance fields of plus and minus relativity into the greater pillars of light. You see what I'm talking about? Unnecessarily esoteric. Anyway, inner light pillars and light cores, which are epikinetic vibrations. These musical vibrations of light can be moved into harmony with the purification of light. So this made me think about Pythagoras. Okay. Pythagoras gave us our first theory of harmonics, and it was done mathematically. And as we know, light can also be measured mathematically. So all he's really saying here is you put these light frequencies together and you create harmony. You create sounds, right? Now, Pythagoras' theory of harmonics was created after he studied in Egypt for 12 years. And he didn't just go and study, right? Like he was taught for 12 years. Then he came back and he gave credit in his talks. He gave credit to these great teachers out of Egypt and that helped him create this theory of harmonics. So all her talk is really saying is harmony. Okay. All right. So we get it. All right. Number 14 says, There are 7 basic colors for each chakra of the human intelligence. These can be coordinated by the Great White Brotherhood to merge with myriad colors to aid the body for spiritual evolvement. This sets the stage in this book for the need of an intermediary to calibrate you to God, right? Because it says these can be coordinated by the Great White Brotherhood, right? So there's 7 chakras of human intelligence. These can be coordinated by the Great White Brotherhood to merge with myriad colors to aid the body for spiritual evolvement. So now it's required that you get somebody from this Great White Brotherhood to calibrate you to God. So now we need an intermediary. And I don't know about you, I'm not real hip about a gatekeeper to the divine. Okay. Especially when they're called the Great White Brotherhood. So, all right, let's keep going. The Great White Brotherhood is the hierarchy of power, which has as part of its authority the color coding of the lower heavens. The regenesis of all colors within the human spectrum funneled back into the white light allows inner vehicles to proceed from the biochemical shell when the meridian of time changes. At that time, the relativity of human creation is directly changed by the High Command and the Great White Brotherhood. Enoch also explained how the Great White Brotherhood governs the people of God. So now we need an intermediary and government. Okay, so this reconfirms the premise that these intermediaries of God have power and authority, right? Because it said govern, just like the Torah, the Old Testament, the Roman Catholic Church, all affirmed those things. But I have a question. What did Jesus say about this, right? Because we remember the part that Jesus said he came to fulfill the Mosaic law, right? He came to fulfill the prophecy, right? Interestingly enough, when we look at what did Jesus say, okay? First of all, Jesus never once said the words Yahweh. Never ever confirmed that Yahweh is God. Her talk keeps saying over and over again, Yahweh, right? And when he talks about his hierarchies, he talks about the office of the Christ, right? That Jesus is somehow middle management of this hierarchy. Okay. Buffer group of the divine, right, Leon? Yeah, exactly. Adrian says Great White Brotherhood sounds really Mormon-y. Yeah, and we talked about the Mormons last time, right? Because her talk likes the Mormons. He says the Book of the Mormons is some scripture, right? So let's talk about what Jesus said about this kind of stuff. Matthew 23:13. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites. By the way, Sadducees, Pharisees, what are they? Jews. Okay. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites. You shut the door of the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. You yourselves do not enter, nor will you let those enter who are trying to. Oh, I don't think he likes intermediaries. Okay. Matthew 24:1-2. Jesus left the temple and was walking away when his disciples came up to him to call his attention to its buildings. Do you see all of these things? He asked. Truly, I tell you, not one stone here will be left on another. Everyone will be thrown down. And that temple was indeed destroyed, right? He's talking about you build these hierarchies, you build these temples, you do these things, and it still falls, it still crumbles. John 4:21-23. Woman, believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. But a time is coming and has now come when the true worshipers will worship the Father in the Spirit and in truth. Not a word about intermediaries and some white brotherhood, okay? Mark 11:15-17. On reaching Jerusalem, Jesus entered the temple courts and began driving out those who were buying and selling there. Is it not written, my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you have made it a den of robbers? And he was referencing Isaiah 56-7, talking about worshiping on the mountaintop. Okay. Hebrews 4:14-16. Therefore, since we have had a great high priest who has ascended into heaven, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold firmly to the faith we profess. Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence, direct access to God. Right? We're approaching God's throne with grace and confidence. Luke 17:20-21. The kingdom of God is not something that can be observed, nor will people say, here it is, or there it is, because the kingdom of God is within you. No intermediaries, no hierarchy, right? I find it interesting that her talk uses the Christ consciousness and the office of the Christ, right, of Jesus, all throughout his hierarchies, which directly opposes Jesus's teachings. This looks more and more like the Pharisees, the hierarchies, right? The intermediaries. You got to pay the priest to do the prayers. You have to pay the priest to gain access to heaven. You have to pay the priest to do the sacrifices. You have to. I was listening to something today, and even in Egypt, they had, at the time of Akhenaten, before Akhenaten changed the religious beliefs to Aten, when it was Ra, there was 200 feast days a year, because when there was a feast day, you had to go and give gifts and money to the priests. And so this is how they made money. The same thing with the Jews. They did the same exact stuff. We have all these feast days and these rituals, and you have to pay the priest to do all these things, right? It sounds like the Pharisees of old. It sounds like the Abrahamic Zionists of today. Sounds like the TVA. Honestly, this is why I say he sounds a lot like the TVA. So let's keep going here. 23. Thereby, the remnant seed who still remain in the physical flesh, even bodies in the death state of the physical flesh, which have previously had their crystalline blood and ichor codes activated, can be resurrected into new bodies of light. So what is ichor? ICHOR. Let's talk about ichor. First, Leon says, the low frequency that God talks to me when I claim I am about to spend $40 on a Saturday night and end up spending $250 plus a parking ticket. Damn, I should have done more than feel God. Did you have fun? That's the important part. Okay. Ichor, ICHOR. Fluid. This is fluid that flows like blood in the veins of the gods. So, what do you say about ichor? The remnant seed who still remain in the physical flesh, even bodies in the death state of the physical flesh, which have previously had their crystalline blood and ichor codes activated, can be resurrected. Okay. Any other definitions of ichor? Oh, yeah, plasma, blood plasma, right? Transports proteins, electrolytes, nutrients, hormones, and waste, and maintains homeostasis, like your pH balance, your fluid balance, your temperature, your immune functions. Okay, so he's talking about even bodies in the death state of the physical flesh, i.e. dead. Why we got to use all these words. The remnant seed who are dead, which have previously had their crystalline blood and ichor codes activated, can be resurrected into the bodies of light. So what happens if plasma is altered? Your ichor, right? And that's what he's talking about, having your ichor codes activated. So what if your plasma is altered? Misfolding is something, it's where your blood can't clot properly. Immune suppression, nerve and brain malfunction, swelling and dehydration, hormonal imbalance, and all that comes with that. Buildup of waste, otherwise known as toxic shock. and accelerated aging. So I may come back to this at some point about why all the thoughts about plasma and ichor and this accelerated aging. Because when we look back at ancient texts, people lived for thousands of years, then they lived for hundreds of years, then they lived for 100 and a half, and now we're, three quarters of 100, we're about 75 years. What is this accelerated aging? So maybe that's what the ancient scripts are referring to like the Watchers or the Igigi or the fallen angels, the Nephilim, whatever reading you're looking at. Maybe that's when they're looking at when they tampered with humanity. Maybe they altered their plasma. But I'll come back to that. Let's look at 26. Those realms of higher intelligence which have failed in their own created worlds are returned to dust world creations so that they can be occupants of the space left behind by those planets that are advanced to the new thresholds of creations. Wait a minute. By the way, we are on a dust planet. This is considered a dust planet. So the failures are sent here. I mean, that's what he said. Those realms of higher intelligence which have failed in their own created worlds are returned to dust world creation so that they can be occupants of the space. Failures are sent here. We have enough of our own problems without failures of other planets being sent here. So is that the fallen? By the way, when they talk about the fallen, right? Maybe the fallen were purposely sent here to live and mess with humanity because they screwed up their own planet. Doesn't seem quite fair. At least to me. Adrian said they must have replaced ichor with liquor. That's funny. Okay. 29. The Great White Brotherhood is the level of intelligence which has the ability to govern the higher energy fields. Wait a minute. Now we're governing the higher energy? This Great White Brotherhood? Okay. Sure. Govern the higher energy fields and the ability to govern repeating plus and minus factors in membrane growth. They have the ability in all of this to be sent from the region of the higher illuminaries to function as grand instructors in lower illuminary worlds. So they're sent from the region of higher to be grand instructors in the lower. And we just talked about how the failures are sent to the dust worlds, right? And these same people have the ability to govern higher energy fields and lower energy fields. Interesting. That is interesting. So he says repeating plus and minus factors in membrane growth. That sounds like an RH factor. The repeating plus and minus factors. So we have the RH factor, plus and minus. We've talked about this, the Neanderthals, right? It was the Neanderthals who carried both the RH positive and RH negative. But when they isolated, they bottlenecked because of inbreeding. It became these RH negative hotbeds. So what do they say about, let's see, the ability to govern repeating plus and minus factors in membrane growth. And they are to function as grand instructors in the lower worlds. Okay. We're learning a little something out of a playbook. All right. Leanne says, I was asleep and talked to Goddess. And I said, can I come back as a princess again if I get another chance? It was more sarcasm from me to her. She told me I can swim to the egg and reset every time. I every time I failed to gain life. I asked some questions and the goddess replied, and I said, "Damn, I have not even finished raising my sons." Then my son grabbed my head and told me to wake up. How interesting. What an I love it. I love it. Swim You can swim to the egg and reset every time. That makes me think of, in a lot of ancient books, they talk about the waters of life, and a lot of times when people hear waters of life, they think of the womb, and it's not that, but where it's more of the, like, plasma fields, how the physical creation started in these plasma fields that look like water. If you guys have ever seen video or pictures of plasma storms, it looks like colorful water. So that's what it makes me think of, like, and plasma energy is what started, like, physical creation on the planet. And so it makes me think of those stories where they talk about swimming through, something rising out of the waters, all of the waters. So that's Leon said, "No, this is real." So this was a like a meditation. Oh, I was asleep and talked to the goddess. Interesting. Wow. That's really interesting though. What a cool vision that you got to have while you're asleep. Interesting. Interesting. Okay, so let's look at 39. The nations of the earth who deny the crossing of light through the Alpha Omega of creation. Okay, so anybody who says, "No, thank you, I don't want to do this thing that you're doing, Great White Brotherhood." This is who we're talking about now. The nations of the earth who deny the crossing of light through the Alpha Omega of creation, deny the Merkaba, deny the prophets of Israel, and do not show the humility necessary to enter the greater body of light. These are not the souls who will enter the Great White Brotherhood. So those folks leave, right? The Great White Brotherhood, they're all going to reset their frequencies and they get to go somewhere else to these greater luminaries, blah, blah, blah. What's that called in Christian mythology? The rapture. Yeah. So it sounds like the rapture, right? Those folks leave, they're raptured up, do whatever they do, and they leave Earth for the rest of us. Like they're gone. We don't even have to worry about them anymore. Kind of sounds like a win-win. I'm just saying. It sounds like a win-win. Oh, yeah. Leon says it was a dream while I was asleep, and then my son woke me up. It's a cool dream. Nina says sacred geometry using the egg of light. Oh, yeah. Ooh. Very good. Now it gets even deeper. Okay. But anyway, I'm all about these folks being raptured, and then the rest of us can be on Earth and nobody be bugging us anymore. All right, 41. In earlier eons, our seed crystals of light were transmitted by the Lords of Light when they came to evolve life in the galaxy through memory codes, which were then recorded within the pyramids 7 eons ago, 12 eons ago, 36 eons ago, and ages past. Wait a minute. Came to evolve life? Doesn't that sound like what I just talked about? The Nephilim, the Anunnaki, the Agigi came to mess, they said came to mess with our plasma. Maybe it's all the same people, right? Okay. So last one. 50. People of Zion, take up your inner bodies of light and join in the Zohar light in communion with the Lords of Light, the Great White Brotherhood. So that's their call to arms. That you join the Great White Brotherhood, or else, buddy, you're going to get it. starting to sound like religious control camouflaged in this divine bureaucracy of esoteric stuff. I would say nonsense, honestly, but her talk takes a lot of stuff from ancient texts, the Kabbalah, the Torah, the Bible, and he takes a lot. There's some stuff from Gnosticism. He takes some stuff from Quran. Um, and the thing is that he's putting it all in one place, and he's purposefully making it sound esoteric so that it sounds very divinely inspired. Okay, whether he himself feels like he was divinely inspired or not, I don't know. Divine inspired. Okay, these are things that there are people out there who believe. Loads of people believe this stuff. So, we can't just say it's drivel or nonsense. And maybe we do think it's drivel or nonsense, but we have to take it seriously because people believe this stuff. And what he's kind of doing is he's giving the keys of what these people think, especially, and I brought it up before, the folks who feel like they can jumpstart the apocalypse, jumpstart the rapture, and things like that. This is those people. This is the stuff that they read and believe to come up with this apocryphal apocalypse, where they want, not only do they want the rapture, they want non-believers burning with sulfur. They want, kind of like the people in the one country that keeps bombing the other side, you know, how they just love to watch the bombing. Like, it's like that. That's what they want. Adrian says, don't they talk about a piece of genetic code being removed from humans? Yeah, they do talk about a piece of code removed. That has something to do with aging. And then there's also, we literally, like in science, we know this. There's a piece of our DNA that is capped where, like, it looks like there's supposed to be more there. Like, we can literally see that we have a piece of our DNA capped. And so that sort of plays into these ancient beliefs of part of our DNA being removed or messed with in some way. Now, for those believers who believe that the Anunnaki were actually aliens, what they think or how they play that into it is that we are a mix of primates who were evolving, humanoid primates who were evolving, and the kind of the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki, when they came from the sky, so they're sky people, when they came, they had servants who were called the Igigi. Okay, this is like the Watchers, kind of like the Nephilim, but these were the servants of the Anunnaki gods. This is a pantheon of 12. Okay, now they above them, the one god, Anu or On, right? So the Anunnaki had the Igigi, who were their servants. Now, when the Anunnaki came to Earth, there was a lot they were trying to do. They wanted to mine some stuff. They wanted to do things. There was a lot they wanted to do. And the Igigi complained that there was too much work to do. And so what they did was they mixed, either the Anunnaki mixed with the humanoids, or they had the Igigi. I think probably more likely the Igigi mixed with the humanoids to create these more superior creatures. So they're part whatever an Anunnaki is and an Igigi is, and they're part primate. Okay. So in this theory is that they capped some of the spiritual or the divine DNA so that we didn't become like gods, that our DNA development was the Tower of Babel, and so it had to be capped, so we couldn't become like the gods and dispersed. So there's some overlapping theories there. So this is just religious control camouflaged by this divine bureaucracy. So this key describes the celestial governance system just like the TVA. Both claim to maintain the sacred blueprint. Both prune various variant souls and realities that deviate, just like these Abrahamic religions always do, right? If you don't, you can make every choice in the whole wide world as long as it's exactly what they want you to do. You can worship whatever God you want as long as it's Yahweh. This is always the play. You have free will as long as you do what God says. Isn't it interesting? I'm going to try not to show my cup. I don't want to get in trouble. But soda is good on my throat tonight. Okay. So both are run by flawed beings. So he who remains, and then some demiurgic type Yahweh lusting for dominion. Like, that's what I'm getting out of this dominion by this Yahweh God. Okay. Hertak himself says, not all light is truth. Some divine systems are just older control programs. How does he know the one he's been given is any different than this old control program? The TVA's timekeepers, or what we would call the lesser gods, right, are empty idols acting in the name of a tyrant. So Kang in the TVA, right, he who remains. And Hertak says, test every hierarchy, even angels can become wardens. We know. We know. And, that's why I'm questioning what he's saying, because I agree with that. You should test every hierarchy, and even angels can become wardens. But then he goes back to saying that if you don't choose and if you don't do exactly what you're supposed to do, exactly what they say, then, you get the evil stick. So Loki, Jesus, all the enlightened and ascended know that true divinity is beyond bureaucracy. Right? Jesus said it over and over and over again. Every time you read anything about from ascended people, never is it bureaucracy. Never is it the offices and the hierarchies and you got to go through this person and only these people can take you to God and blah, blah, blah. Loki himself and Sylvie give us psychological liberation, which is a soul's duty to defy false gods. That is psychological liberation. The soul's duty to defy false gods. So we look at the TVA. The fact that the loom can be broken is interesting because the loom's fragility proves that it is not divine, right? Because if it was divine, if it was perfect, if it was how everything was supposed to be, it wouldn't be breakable, right? Nature always finds a way. The divine is organic. Like I said, it finds a way. It's not linear. It is rational chaos. It is flow, not force. How many times and how many ways have we been told of Yahweh's fragility? Hi, Kareem. Thanks for being here. Think about it. Even in the book that supposedly is divinely inspired by God, Yahweh, whatever, how many times are we told about how fragile Yahweh is? He's jealous. Literally, he gets his feelings hurt. He's wrathful. He loses his temper when he doesn't get his way. And he is susceptible to dark forces. And I brought this up before, that he has no control over these dark forces, that, It's not his fault these bad things happen. Or, these dark forces took over this and that and the third and made these things happen. And he has no power and no dominion over dark forces. Is he really that fragile? He's jealous, he's wrathful, he's whiny, he's a bit narcissistic, and he's susceptible, he's weak against dark forces. So is he divine? Have you I know I have you ever felt managed by religious rules? Like literally being managed by these rules that you are supposed to follow. These are the rules. You have to do this, you have to do that, you have to say these words and then act that way and do this thing, right? It's like for Catholics, if I say peace be with you, there is a automatic answer, right? Because it's the rules. If I say this, you say that. If I do this, you do that. And these are the rules that God gave you. And this is what the pastor's supposed to do. And you got to go to church on Sunday and Bible study on Wednesday night. And there's all these rules around how you're supposed to live and how you're supposed to use your time. Have you guys ever felt managed by religion? Again, I know I have. Have you ever felt managed by spiritual rules? I have. I am. But the difference with spiritual rules seems to be things like universal laws, right? What goes up must come down. As above, so below. These are like the laws of physics. And so I am a bit managed by them, but I don't feel controlled by them. Probably because it applies equally to everyone. Everyone has to abide by gravity, right? But it seems like in these religious rules, not everybody gets punishments. Not everybody is forgiven. Not everybody gets their reward when they're dead. Some people get their reward on heaven. It just doesn't seem like it's evenly dispersed, right? So maybe that's the problem that I have. Leon says, managed and the greatest attempt to socialize me. Oh, yeah, the Pledge of Allegiance under God. Yeah, praying in school. So I'm going to take a vote. Best Live Tribe on YouTube here. You guys can vote. Also, the replay gang, you can vote. Anybody watching, you can vote. This is multiple choice. So, is creation run by A, loving flow colonized by religious dogma? Letter B, a hierarchy of higher intelligences? Or letter C, chaotic gods with human personas? So these are different beliefs across different times and different regions. And I just wonder what people's paradigm is, how they view how creation is run. Again, letter A, loving flow colonized by religious dogma. Letter B, a hierarchy of higher intelligences. Or letter C, chaotic gods with human personas. So take your vote, and we're just voting. But all of this makes me wonder, do the current powers that be know about this cataclysmic shift her talk says is coming, right? Because we're getting deep enough in this now where he's referencing all of these occultist or esoteric or even Zionistic beliefs that we're hearing and seeing today. And we talked before about the cycles of cataclysm and those kind of things. Do the current powers that be know this cataclysmic shift is coming? Are they preparing for it? Is that why all the weirdness is going on? And is the keys of Enoch their esoteric blueprint to maintain dominion? And maybe that's why it's so hard to get this damn book. Interesting. something to think about. So, as always, I want to know what you guys think. Now, my Sunday show, normally I have them on Sundays. It's going to be on Monday because I'm going to be traveling on Sunday. So the next show that's coming up on Monday is the first part in a 2 to 3 part series called Under the Dominion, The Rise of the God Eater Yahweh. This is documentary style. It will be a little bit long. There is an extraordinarily long citations list. There will be videos played of others, but it literally will be a live documentary with all the receipts. So I really, really, really hope you guys can be there. I appreciate you being here tonight. And then, of course, next Wednesday, we'll continue on with the Keys of Enoch. I hope everybody has a great rest of your Wednesday. It was great to see you. Bye. Please like the video if you haven't already. It really helps the algorithm to know what kind of things you like. Share where you think it's appropriate, especially to someone who you think needs to hear it. And don't forget to check out some of the wilder Pivot Point Wednesday shows. And last, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, especially if you want to break down complex concepts that make the esoteric not so teric, helping you on your journey to become your most authentic self. By subscribing, you'll join a community that thrives on curiosity and growth, and you'll never miss out on insights and some wild discussions. Let's uncover the universe together. Bye.